My husband's parent demanded a copy of our house key, saying, "I need access in case of emergencies." My husband handed it over without asking me. I smiled, took a sip of my coffee, and said, "Perfect." Because I just changed the locks. Their smug expression faded instantly. I didn't grow up in a family that barged into each other's lives. My parents respected my space. They never showed up unannounced, never pried into my personal business, and certainly never demanded a key to my home. My husband's parents? Completely different story. Mark and I had been married for 4 years, and we'd just bought our first home together in a quiet Dallas suburb. It was everything we wanted: 3 bedrooms, a big backyard, and, most importantly, ours. The first time we showed the house to Mark's parents, I could already see where this was going. We had barely stepped inside when Diane, my mother-in-law, placed a hand over her chest and gasped. "Oh, you didn't tell us you were buying a house," she said, her voice all sweet and fake shocked. Her husband, George, nodded. "You should have brought us along. We could have helped you pick a good one." I smiled, tight-lipped. We didn't want help. But the real problem started when Diane stepped into the kitchen, ran a hand over the counter like she owned the place, and turned to Mark with the kind of smile that made my stomach turn. "So, of course, we'll need a copy of the key," she said casually. I blinked. "Why?" Diane looked at me like I was stupid. "For emergencies," she said, like it was obvious. "What if you're out of town, and something happens? What if we need to check on the house?" I glanced at Mark, expecting him to shut this down immediately. We had already discussed this, no extra keys for anyone. But Mark hesitated. "It's not a big deal," he said, rubbing the back of his neck. "It's just for emergencies." I looked him dead in the eye. "Your sister doesn't give them a key to her house. Why should we?" That shut him up. Diane gave an exaggerated sigh. "Amanda is different," she muttered, shaking her head like her daughter was some ungrateful monster for having boundaries. I stood my ground. "We'll think about it." And that was that. Or so I thought. A week later, I walked into the kitchen on a lazy Saturday morning, still in my pajamas, coffee in hand, when I noticed something sitting on the counter. A brand new house key. My stomach dropped. I picked it up slowly. My heart was pounding. "Mark?" I called. He walked in, yawning. "What's up?" I held up the key. "Did you make a copy of our house key?" "Oh, yeah," he said like it was nothing. "Mom and Dad asked for one." I just stared at him. My face was burning. "You gave your parents a key to our house? Without even asking me?" Mark frowned, like he didn't see the problem. "It's just for emergencies, babe. It's not like they're gonna use it all the time." "Are you serious?" I asked. "Mark, they don't have a key to your sister's house. Why do they need one to ours?" He hesitated again. "I mean, I don't know. They asked, so I figured. I didn't think you'd care this much." I took a slow, deep breath. "Mark," I said, as calmly as I could, "this is our home. Not just yours. You should have talked to me first." He sighed. "Fine. Do you want me to take it back?" I stared at him for a moment. "No," I said. "I have a better idea." That same day, after Mark left to go golfing with his friends, I drove straight to Home Depot and bought a new lock set. It took me less than an hour to swap them out. When Mark got home, I was waiting in the living room, casually spinning a new set of keys in my hand. He dropped his bag by the door and frowned. "What's that?" I smiled. "The new house keys." His confusion turned to panic. "You changed the locks?" "Yep," I said, taking a sip of my coffee. "Since you gave your parents a key without asking me, I figured I'd return the favor. Now? No one has a key but us." Mark turned pale. "Oh, crap. What?" I asked, still calm. He scratched the back of his head. "Mom and Dad are coming over, now." I grinned. "Perfect." 15 minutes later, I watched from the Ring camera as Diane confidently approached the front door, key in hand. She slid it into the lock. Turned it. It didn't work. I saw her expression change in real time. She pulled the key out. Checked it. Tried again. Still nothing. Finally, she rattled the doorknob, then turned to George, whispering something. Then, she banged on the door. I took my sweet time answering. When I finally opened it, Diane's face was twisted in frustration. She held up the useless key. Why doesn't this work? I smiled. Oh, I changed the locks. Her jaw dropped. George's face turned red. You what? She screeched. You see, I said, mirroring her condescending tone from before, it's called trust. She lost it. Mark, she turned to her son, eyes wild with rage. Are you seriously letting her do this? Mark looked like he wanted to melt into the floor. He cleared his throat. Mom, Dad, we just wanted some privacy. Diane's mouth fell open like I had just slapped her. Privacy? From your parents? She gasped. Mark, we raised you. We took care of you. And now you're treating us like strangers. George stepped forward, arms crossed. This is beyond disrespectful, son. I tilted my head. Funny. If we're such a close family, why doesn't Amanda give you a key? Diane froze. George stammered. That's different. No, I said, my smile never wavering. It's not. Diane's face twisted with anger. You don't need privacy from family, she snapped. Mark's jaw tightened. I could tell he was starting to see the problem. But before he could say anything, Diane played her last card. Her eyes welled up with crocodile tears. I just never thought my own son would treat me like this, she choked out. After everything we've done for you. Mark shifted uncomfortably. I didn't blink. Mark, Diane whispered. Fix this. Mark looked at me. I held my ground. The tension was suffocating. And then? Diane did something that made everything so much worse. Diane's face was red, her breathing heavy. She turned to Mark, gripping his arm like she was trying to physically pull him to her side. Fix this, she hissed again, her eyes darting between me and him. Mark swallowed hard. Mom, there's nothing to fix. That was the wrong answer. Diane's expression collapsed into horror like he had just told her he was disowning her. She let go of his arm, took a dramatic step back, and whispered, I don't even know who you are anymore. George stepped in then, puffing out his chest like he was about to give a grand speech. Mark, he said firmly, you are a grown man. And a grown man should never let his wife drive a wedge between him and his family. I laughed. George snapped his eyes to me like I had just slapped him. Something funny? I crossed my arms. Yeah. The way you're acting like I'm the problem here. George took a deep breath through his nose, nostrils flaring. You don't understand, do you? I stepped forward, my tone ice cold. No, George. You don't understand. This is my home. My rules. And neither of you are entitled to a key. Diane let out a strangled scoff. Entitled? We are his parents. I nodded. And Mark is a grown man with a wife. Maybe start acting like it. The color drained from her face. George clenched his jaw. Mark? Mark just stood there. Silent. Fidgeting. Diane sniffed loudly and turned her glare back to her son. Mark, if you're going to allow this disrespect, then maybe you don't deserve parents who care about you. My eyebrows shot up. Oh. So that's the game now? Emotional blackmail? I cut in before Mark could even open his mouth. Good to know, I said. Because I don't think parents who manipulate their son into submission really care about him. You just want control. George turned red. Diane's mouth opened and closed like a fish. Mark, God bless him, finally grew a spine at that moment. Mom, Dad, he said, his voice tight, we're done here. Diane looked like she was about to have a stroke. Excuse me? Mark took my hand. I love you guys, but we're not talking about this anymore. If you can't respect our space, then that's on you. George opened his mouth, but Mark beat him to it. We'll let you know when we're ready to have you over, he added. But you don't get a key. And that's final. Then? He shut the door. Dead silence. The Ring camera caught Diane and George standing there, looking absolutely stunned. Diane shook her head, whispering furiously to George, who just stared at the door like he couldn't believe what had just happened. Then? They left. And for a little while, I thought that was the end of it. I was wrong. For 2 weeks, we didn't hear a word from them. No texts, no calls, no surprise visits. It was bliss. Then, out of nowhere, Mark's phone blew up. It started with a text from his aunt. Aunt Caroline, Mark, why are you shutting out your parents? They're devastated. Then a call from his uncle. Uncle Joe, Mark, your mom is beside herself. She says you won't even let her in your home? That can't be true. Then a message from his cousin. Laura, your mom called me crying. What's going on? Mark turned to me, eyes wide. They're calling the whole damn family, he said, running a hand through his hair. I sighed. Should have seen this coming. Mark exhaled sharply and called his sister, Amanda. She picked up after 2 rings. Let me guess, she said. Mom and Dad are on a warpath. Mark groaned. What the hell, Amanda? They're making it sound like I locked them out of my life. You did, she deadpanned. And that's the best thing you could have done. He let out a bitter laugh. So they pulled this on you too? Oh, they tried, Amanda said. But when they realized they couldn't guilt me into submission, they pulled the real stunt. I frowned. What stunt? Amanda hesitated. They're going to force a confrontation. Mark and I exchanged a glance. Amanda sighed. Look, I'm just warning you. If they follow their usual pattern, they'll show up again soon. And they won't come empty-handed. I frowned. What does that mean? They're gonna bring backup. Amanda was 100% right. That Saturday, Mark and I were having a lazy morning when we heard aggressive knocking at the door. I pulled up the Ring camera feed. And there they were. Diane. George. And Diane's sister, Aunt Patty. Oh, and a priest. I choked on my coffee. Mark. Why the hell is there a priest at our door? Mark stared at the screen like he was seeing things. The knocking got louder. Mark sighed, already exhausted, and opened the door just enough to step outside. Mom. Dad. Aunt Patty. Anne. Father Davis? Diane immediately launched into hysterics. Mark, we had no choice, she wailed. We had to bring Father Davis because this woman is ruining you. I felt my soul leave my body. Aunt Patty put a hand on Diane's back, nodding seriously. We're here for an intervention, Mark. We need to get you away from her influence. My jaw hit the floor. Mark's entire face darkened. An intervention, he repeated. For your marriage, Diane sniffled. We thought if we brought a man of God, you'd finally see how she's poisoning you. Mark slowly turned his head toward the priest. Father Davis. Did they tell you why you're here? Father Davis, an older man who already looked exhausted, sighed. They told me you were in an unhealthy marriage. That you were being isolated. Mark laughed. Father, my marriage is fine. My parents just hate the fact that they don't control me anymore. Diane gasped. That is not true. Mark crossed his arms. Oh, so you didn't try to guilt me with the whole we gave you everything speech? You didn't call every relative in Texas to gang up on me? You didn't bring a priest to my house to save me from my own wife? Diane's mouth opened. No sound came out. Aunt Patty jumped in. Mark, she said sweetly, we just want to talk. Mark's voice was like stone. No. Diane gasped. But Mark shook his head. We're done. Leave. Aunt Patty gave me a sharp look. You're tearing this family apart. I smiled. No, Patty. You all are doing that just fine on your own. Diane burst into actual tears. But Mark? Mark shut the door. And we waited. For the next move. After Mark shut the door, we just stood there. Neither of us spoke. The Ring camera showed Diane still crying, Aunt Patty rubbing her back, and George shaking his head like we were criminals who had just been caught red-handed. And Father Davis? He looked like he regretted every life choice that led him to this moment. Eventually, they all left. Mark let out a heavy sigh. I swear to God, my family is insane. I patted his arm. That's an understatement. He groaned and ran a hand down his face. I need a drink. I started to relax. Maybe, just maybe, that was the end of it. But then? The real nightmare began. That night, Mark and I were in bed, exhausted, when his phone buzzed. It was a notification from our security system. Motion detected at the front door. Mark sat up so fast, the blanket slid off of him. What the hell? I grabbed my phone and pulled up the live feed from our camera. At first, we saw nothing. Then, in the bottom corner of the screen, something moved. A hand. I sucked in a sharp breath. Someone's there, I whispered. Mark and I froze, watching as the hand disappeared. Then, a few seconds later, the doorknob jiggled. Someone was trying to get in. Mark jumped out of bed, grabbed his phone, and stormed toward the front door. I followed, my heart pounding. We didn't open the door. We weren't stupid. Instead, Mark spoke through the Ring camera microphone. "Whoever you are, you better back the hell up," he said, his voice dangerously low. Silence. Then, a shadow moved away from the door. We watched as the figure stepped back, turned around, and walked straight into the streetlight. And that's when we saw it. George. Mark's own father. Trying to break into our house. I grabbed Mark's arm before he could rip the door open. Mark's voice came out sharp and cold. "Dad, what the hell are you doing?" George jumped like a guilty kid caught stealing from a candy store. Then he tried to play it off, shoving his hands into his pockets. "I was just checking on things," he muttered. Mark's hands curled into fists. "At midnight?" "I wanted to make sure you two were safe," George said, avoiding eye contact. Mark shook his head, laughing bitterly. "Safe from what, Dad?" "You were trying to get inside." George's jaw clenched. "If you hadn't changed the damn locks, I wouldn't have to." I saw red. I stepped forward, my voice deadly calm. "So let me get this straight," I said. "You showed up in the middle of the night. Tried to get inside. And when you couldn't, you what? Thought you'd just let yourself in?" George glared at me. "I don't need permission to check on my own son." I felt Mark's whole body tense beside me. Mark's voice was pure rage. "Dad. Go home. Now." George didn't move. That's when I reached for my phone and started dialing. George's eyes flicked to the screen. "You wouldn't." I held up my phone. "Try me." He backed up immediately. "You've changed, Mark," George muttered. "And not for the better." Then, he left. Mark was furious. The next day, he called his mother and told her what George had done. Diane defended him. "He was just worried about you," she cried. "Can't a father check on his son?" Mark stared at his phone like he couldn't believe what he was hearing. "Mom. He tried to break into my house." Diane scoffed. "You're being dramatic." Mark lost it. "I'm done, Mom. If you and Dad don't start respecting our boundaries, we're cutting you off." That shut her up real fast. She sniffled. "Fine. If that's what you want." Then she hung up. We didn't hear from them for 3 weeks. And for a while, things were peaceful. Until we got a letter in the mail. It was from a law firm. I opened it, read the first few lines, and felt my blood turn to ice. Mark grabbed the paper from me, his eyes scanning the words. His hands started shaking. It was a petition for access. His parents were suing us for visitation rights. I grabbed the paper back and read it again, just to make sure I wasn't imagining things. "They're trying to take us to court," I whispered. "For visitation?" Mark's voice was cold. "They're trying to legally force their way into our lives." I felt sick. We didn't have kids. So why the hell were they suing for visitation rights? Then I saw the fine print. They were petitioning for family access rights. I grabbed my phone and called Amanda. The moment she picked up, I blurted, "Did Mom and Dad ever try to sue you?" Amanda cursed loudly. "Son of a," she exhaled sharply. "I was hoping you'd be spared." My stomach dropped. "They did this to you?" "Yep," she muttered. "It didn't go anywhere, but they tried. They wanted legal rights to enter my home and be involved in my life." I felt like I was going to throw up. "They're escalating," Mark muttered. "They didn't get what they wanted, so now they're weaponizing the law." I clenched my jaw. "They are not winning this." Amanda sighed. "It's gonna get uglier before it gets better." I swallowed hard. We had no idea just how right she was. Mark and I sat in our living room, the petition for visitation rights spread out on the coffee table like a loaded weapon. It wasn't about grandchildren, because we didn't have any. It wasn't even about seeing us. It was about control. Mark clenched his jaw. "This is insane. They're trying to use the courts to force their way into our house." I nodded, still reading the fine print. They're arguing that we're isolating them from family unity. That we're emotionally abusing you by keeping them at a distance. Mark exhaled sharply. So now they're the victims? I grabbed my phone. We need a lawyer. Fast. Mark's sister, Amanda, was already on speed dial. She picked up immediately. Tell me you're already getting an attorney. Working on it, I muttered. Good. Because if they're doing what they did to me, they're going to start playing dirty. I frowned. What do you mean? Amanda sighed. They're going to start dragging other people into this. Friends. Extended family. Hell, maybe even neighbors. They need to make themselves look like helpless parents being abused. Mark groaned. Jesus Christ, I can't believe we share DNA with these people. Amanda scoffed. Believe it. And prepare for war. Within a week, the phone calls started again. Mark's Aunt Caroline, Mark, I just don't understand why you're doing this to your parents. They love you. His Uncle Joe, your dad is heartbroken. Can't you just compromise? His childhood friend, Brian, dude, your parents are telling everyone you cut them off and refuse to talk. Is that true? Even our next-door neighbor, Mrs. Lawson, cornered me outside one morning while I was getting the mail. She frowned. I ran into your mother-in-law the other day at the grocery store. She said you two don't let them visit anymore. I inhaled slowly. They don't visit because they tried to break into our house. At midnight. Mrs. Lawson blinked. Oh. They also tried to sue us, I added. She visibly paled. Oh. I smiled. Yeah. Oh. Mark lost his mind when he found out just how far they were going. They're trying to turn everyone against us, he snapped. I'm so sick of this. They act like we murdered their dog. I crossed my arms. Then it's time to hit back. And hit back we did. Mark's parents thought they had the upper hand. They showed up with their lawyer, smug and confident, Diane dabbing at her fake tears with a tissue. We showed up with ours. And? With proof. Screenshots of George trying to break into our house. Texts where they guilt-tripped Mark and spread rumors about us. Recordings of their dramatic outbursts, including their intervention stunt. The moment Diane saw what we had, her face turned ashen. The judge looked through the evidence, silent for several long minutes. Then, finally, he spoke. This is an abuse of the court's time, he said flatly. There is no legal basis for forcing access between two competent adults. Diane gasped. But, the judge held up a hand. Your son and his wife are not obligated to provide you unlimited access to their home, nor do they owe you family unity at the expense of their own privacy and safety. George's face was brick red. Diane looked like she was about to faint. Mark? Mark just sat there, arms crossed, watching his parents finally face reality. Then the judge delivered the final blow. This case is dismissed. And I strongly suggest you all seek family counseling if you wish to repair this relationship. But legally speaking? You have no case here. You need to let go. Let go. Diane shattered at those words. Her mouth fell open, her rage boiling over into an outright tantrum. We raised him, she shrieked. We did everything for him. And she turned to me, eyes blazing with hatred. She poisoned him against us. Mark immediately stood up. No, Mom, he said, his voice calm and firm. You did that all by yourself. Diane's entire face crumpled. For the first time, I saw real tears in her eyes. But not out of guilt. Out of loss. She had tried everything. Manipulation, guilt, threats, legal force. And she had lost. The moment we walked out of that courtroom, Mark let out the biggest sigh of relief I'd ever heard. It's over, he whispered. Or so we thought. That night, we got a call. From Diane. Mark stared at the screen. Should I pick up? I shrugged. Might as well. He answered. Mom? Silence. Then, in a small, broken voice, she whispered, We're cutting you out of the will. Mark and I both burst out laughing. Not out of cruelty. But because, after everything, this was her final, pathetic attempt at control. Mark took a deep breath. Mom, he said, his voice firm. Do whatever you want. Silence. Then, finally, click. She had hung up. And just like that? It really was over. Diane and George never reached out again. The family stopped calling once they realized we weren't playing their games anymore. Mark felt an overwhelming sense of peace for the first time in his life. One night, as we sat on our back porch, he turned to me and said, "I should have stood up to them years ago." I squeezed his hand. Better late than never. And you know what? We never changed the locks again. Because for the first time in a long time, our home was truly ours.